Success is the sum of small efforts, repeated day in and day out. Robert Collier. People are often mesmerized by giant leaps, by explosive moments, as if success were a dazzling firework bursting across the night sky. But they forget that to achieve that light, thousands of sparks must quietly burn in the darkness, unseen by anyone, uncelebrated by anyone. Our brain craves quick rewards. It loves the feeling of instant, loves clear results, and therefore it easily grows discouraged by small, repetitive actions that seem meaningless. But it is here that discipline becomes a form of intelligence higher than emotion. The persistent person is not someone who always has motivation, but someone who understands that every small action, no matter how tedious, is a brick laid for the future. A small drop of water falls on stone. 1 drop is harmless, 10 drops change nothing, but thousands, millions of drops, day after day, year after year, eventually the stone must yield. Success operates by that law, not noisy, not rushed, but irreversible if you are persistent enough. What causes many people to fail is not that they are not talented enough, but that they underestimate the power of accumulation. They give up before there are enough drops of water to make a difference. Meanwhile, successful people understand one simple truth. You don't need to do something great every day. You only need to never stop. There comes a moment outsiders call a breakthrough, luck, or talent, yet those who lived it know clearly. It is only the inevitable result of thousands of unrecorded repetitions. Success, after all, is not a single moment, but a habit maintained long enough to become destiny. Jump, and the net will appear. John Burroughs. We often demand certainty before we act, like a child who only dares to step when sure the ground will not collapse. But life does not work that way. Opportunity, support, or hidden strength do not wait ready to reassure you. They only appear once you have dared to leave the edge of safety, once your body is suspended in midair with no way back. People are bound by the illusion of control. We want to see the whole path before taking the first step, want to guarantee that failure cannot happen. Yet that very demand stifles the power to break through. Act first, then find the way. That is how the brain learns to adapt, how the survival instinct is awakened most powerfully. When you jump, your entire inner system, mind, emotion, and intuition, is forced to unite and weave the net that catches you. Not magic, but the fullest expression of your own potential. Like someone standing on a cliff in thick fog. If they wait for the mist to clear, they may stand there forever. But when they leap, they do not fall into empty void, they fall into abilities they never knew they possessed. The more they venture, the more they realize the so-called net is not something that comes from outside, but something woven from courage itself. A deep belief, you are far stronger than your fear. Sometimes the greatest step forward is not perfect preparation, but daring to jump before you feel ready. And in that instant, you do not merely find the net, you find yourself. What would you attempt to do if you knew you could not fail? Robert H. Schuller. In real life, there is no such place where failure is impossible. If you base your decisions on that assumption, you slip into illusion rather than strength. Yet understood correctly, this is a razor-sharp psychological test. It strips away the layers of fear that hold you back. If you knew you could not fail, you would stop procrastinating, stop doubting yourself, stop waiting for anyone's permission. You would choose the very thing you normally avoid, not because it is easy, but because it matters. You might begin a new path, speak what you have kept hidden, pursue a goal so large you once thought it was not for you. When fear is removed, what remains is your true nature: ambition, curiosity, and the hunger to live life fully. You do not need a guarantee of no failure to act this way. The question exists to flip the script. What truly stops you is not lack of ability, but an imagined fear of consequences. And that fear is often magnified until it paralyzes the will. Instead of asking, what if I could not fail? Ask yourself, what is important enough for me to accept the possibility of failure? When you find the answer, you will no longer need certainty. You will act not for safety, but because it is worth it. And that is when you come closest to the strongest version of yourself. The only way to discover the limits of the possible is to venture a little way past them into the impossible. Arthur C. Clarke. Limits are not a solid concrete wall. They are like the horizon. The closer you approach, the farther they retreat. Yet most of us have never gone far enough to notice, because fear builds imaginary barriers while we are still standing still. The impossible is often not objective reality, but a product of memory, of old failures, of warnings that have sunk deep into the subconscious. The brain, driven by its survival instinct, always tries to keep you in the familiar safe zone. But that safe zone is a velvet cage, comfortable, pleasant, and dangerous because it makes you forget you can fly. When you venture a little past, what matters is not how far you travel, but that you shatter the old structure of belief. You send a new signal to yourself. Limits are not fixed. And each time, the so-called impossible is worn away, like ice melting under sunlight, silent yet unstoppable. You step into a dark room, you see nothing, so you assume there is no path. But when you dare take one small step, your hand brushes the air, then the wall, then a door reality slowly reveals itself. The impossible exists only while you stand still. It vanishes the moment you begin to move. It does not ask you to leap into the abyss, only to take one step beyond the familiar. And in that single step, you do not merely expand your abilities, you redefine who you are. Because in the end, the greatest limits are not in the world, but in what you believe about yourself. Great things are not done by impulse, but by a series of small things brought together. People like to believe in flashes of inspiration. One bold decision, one all-out effort is enough to change everything. But reality is far colder. Great things are not born from fleeting inspiration, but from a structure of steady accumulation, where each small action links to the next, like inseparable links in a chain. Impulsive action brings a powerful rush. It makes us feel we are truly living, doing something grand. Yet that feeling fades quickly, leaving behind the emptiness of inconsistency. Small things repeated every day, on the other hand, often feel boring, even meaningless in the short term. That is why most people quit. They cannot endure the tedium long enough to reach the result. A colossal painting is made from millions of tiny brushstrokes. No single stroke is grand enough to create the masterpiece, yet without any one of them, the whole would collapse. Great achievement works the same way. It is the convergence of small choices, seemingly insignificant decisions, repeated with an almost cold determination. What makes this principle so powerful is its irreversibility. Each small action is like an investment in your own future. At first, the returns are nearly invisible, but over time, the compounding effect gains speed, and at some point, the results explode as if they appeared suddenly, though in truth, they were being built quietly for a very long time. Ordinary things done in an extraordinary way. Once you understand that greatness is the result of structure, not inspiration, you stop chasing random breakthroughs. Instead, you begin to build little by little until your own life becomes living proof of the power of accumulation. Success is not how high you have climbed, but how much positive difference you have made in the world. Roy T. Bennett. The way people define their own worth. From early on, we are programmed to measure success by height, titles, money, status, as if life were a ladder and whoever stands higher has greater meaning. You can stand very high and still touch no one, change nothing except your own shadow. Climbing high satisfies the ego. It brings a sense of control, recognition, being seen. But creating positive difference operates on another level. It requires you to step out of your own center. When you begin to ask, what good am I? Instead of, who am I better than? A new frame of reference takes shape. Value is no longer personal height, but the reach of your influence. Two mountains. One soaring but barren, lifeless, the other lower, yet the source of rivers that nourish an entire land. Which is more successful? The answer depends on whether you see life as a race or as an ecosystem. In that ecosystem, meaning lies not in how much space you occupy, but in how much you improve the space around you. The paradox is that when you focus on creating value for others, you do not lose anything you expand. You become a point of connection, a resource, an agent of change. And then success is no longer a lonely peak, but a continuous flow of positive influence. Climb, but not merely to stand higher. Climb to see farther, to help more people, to turn your personal journey into a force that lifts the world. Because in the end, what remains is not where you stood, but what you left behind in the lives of others. Your work is going to fill a large part of your life, and the only way to be truly satisfied is to do what you believe is great work. You are handing over the majority of your living hours to what you call work. And if that work is only prolonged endurance, then you are not simply working, you are quietly trading away your own life. People possess a frightening ability to adapt. We can grow used to boredom, accept days that repeat meaninglessly, convince ourselves that everyone lives this way. Yet deep inside, a quiet dissatisfaction still simmers, not loud, not explosive, but slowly gnawing at the feeling of being alive. Because when work is no longer tied to a belief in its value, it turns into mechanical motion. You are physically present, but spiritually absent. Great work does not have to be glamorous or admired. It is work that makes you feel you are creating something meaningful, even if small. It demands intellectual and emotional investment and self-respect. When you believe in what you do, every effort stops being a drain and becomes an extension of who you are. You are not merely completing tasks, you are building yourself through each action. Two people climb the same hill. One sees it as punishment, every step a burden. The other sees it as a journey of conquest, every step progress. The slope never changes, yet the experience is completely different. Work is the same. The task may be identical, but the meaning you give it decides whether you feel alive or merely exist. Are you doing something you respect? If not, dissatisfaction is not the problem, it is a signal. And if you are courageous enough to listen, you will begin to move, little by little, toward work that not only sustains you, but makes you feel truly alive. People only like to count their troubles. They do not calculate their happiness. Fyodor Dostoyevsky. A small problem can spread like ink across white paper, while good things pass like a breeze, leaving no trace. We remember one criticism clearly, but forget 10 words of praise. We dwell on mistakes for hours, yet rarely pause to count the things that are going right. Our ancestors survived by focusing on danger, not by savoring peace. In the modern world, that mechanism has become a distorted lens, making us feel lacking even when reality is not so bad. We unconsciously keep a skewed balance sheet, meticulously recording every trouble while leaving the column for happiness blank. You are keeping a notebook. Each day you carefully write down everything that discomforts, disappoints, or worries you. The notebook thickens quickly, and you look at it and conclude, "My life is so heavy." Yet you forget you have never recorded the moments of relief, the small joys, the good things that quietly support you every single day. Not because they do not exist, but because you have never calculated them. Happiness is not rare, it is simply not loud. It lives in things so familiar they are taken for granted. A quiet morning, a full meal, someone still by your side. But when unrecognized, happiness becomes invisible, and the mind keeps spinning in its shortcomings. When you begin to count the good things too, not to console yourself, but to see more clearly, a subtle shift happens. You stop being a victim of circumstance and become a conscious observer. And from that point, life does not necessarily become easier, but it becomes lighter because you finally see the whole picture, not just the cracks on the surface. No one is smarter than you. And if they are smarter, so what? What good is their knowledge to you? Terence McKenna. People often live inside an invisible ranking where intelligence becomes the measure of worth, and everyone struggles to find their place. But this game has no finish line. There is always someone better, faster, sharper. And if you keep measuring yourself by other standards, you will always live in a state of lack. Comparison creates two dangerous illusions: feeling inferior when you fall short, or arrogant when you surpass. Both throw development off course, because the real question is not who is smarter, but What are you doing with what you have? Intelligence, if unused, is merely frozen potential. And someone else's intelligence, no matter how great, does not automatically become value in your life. You stand before a vast library. The knowledge inside is infinite, far beyond your own capacity. Yet if you never open a single book, all that richness means nothing. Similarly, someone else being smarter does not weaken you unless you use it as an excuse not to act. On the contrary, if you know how to learn, select, and apply, their intelligence becomes a resource, not a threat. You do not need to be the smartest person to live a meaningful life. You only need to be awake enough to use your own intelligence effectively and humble enough to turn the intelligence of others into leverage for yourself. It is the way you transform knowledge into action. And once you do that, the question, who is smarter, loses all importance because you are already busy building your own life. Learn to distinguish what is worth valuing and to laugh at the rest. Hermann Hesse. People often exhaust themselves not because they do too many important things, but because they treat everything as equally important. A casual remark, a tiny mistake, a passing glance, all are elevated to problems, stealing mental energy like invisible thieves. When you do not know what is truly worth protecting, you try to protect everything and end up protecting nothing. Distinction is not merely a choice. It is a form of power. The power to decide what may affect your emotions and what may not. To laugh at the rest is not contempt for the world, but a mechanism of release. It is like watching a small storm through a window. You acknowledge it exists, yet you do not let it carry you away. That smile is the mark of self-mastery, of refusing to hand power to things that do not deserve it. Your mind is a room. If you let anyone or anything enter and make noise, the room quickly turns chaotic. But when you begin to choose keeping only what truly matters and laughing off the rest, the space becomes clear, light, and orderly. You stop reacting out of habit and begin acting by choice. When you know what is worth valuing, you invest in it deeply. And when you are wise enough to laugh off the trivial, you free up an enormous well of energy to live, to focus, and to stop being pulled by things that were never worthy of your attention.